I remember the exact moment I first felt a lie. Not heard it, not suspected it, but felt it, like a change in the room's temperature. I must have been 7, or perhaps 8. I was in my grandmother's kitchen, a room that always smelled of yeast and warm sugar, a place where sunlight fell through the window in beams as thick and golden as honey. She had a porcelain sugar bowl, a little white dome painted with delicate blue birds that was the undisputed monarch of her countertop. It was her quiet pride. And one afternoon, in a clumsy pirouette while fetching a glass of water, I sent it tumbling. It didn't just break, it seemed to shatter into 100 silent, snowy pieces on the worn linoleum floor. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. When my grandmother entered, drawn by the sudden silence, she saw the glittering wreckage and then my face. I saw the briefest flicker of disappointment in her eyes, a tiny, pained twitch at the corner of her mouth, before her expression was carefully smoothed over, like a wrinkled tablecloth being pulled taut. She knelt, her knees creaking like the floorboards. "Oh my," she said, her voice soft. "The cat must have been chasing a sunbeam again." And that was it. That was the lie. It wasn't the words themselves. The words were a kindness, a shield she was offering me. But the lie had a shape, a weight. It existed in the space between her gentle words and the truth of the scene. It was in the way her hands, usually so busy and expressive, lay perfectly still on her knees, refusing to participate in the story she was telling. It was in the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, which were still fixed on the porcelain dust. Her words said, "The cat did it," but her body, in its stillness and its sorrow, said, "I know you did this, and I am sad, but I will protect you." In that moment, a cold, clear little bell rang somewhere deep inside me. It was the sound of dissonance, the sound of two stories being told at once, one with the mouth and one with the soul. I had not yet learned the word deception, but I understood, with the profound, uncomplicated clarity of a child, that the truth had a feeling, and its absence had one too. That was the first time I understood that a lie is rarely a perfect, seamless creation. It is almost always a clumsy piece of patchwork. It's a ghost in the room that, while invisible, displaces the air, makes the candles flicker, and leaves a chill on the back of your neck. We humans are, by our very nature, terrible liars. Our minds may be clever enough to weave intricate falsehoods, but our bodies are ancient, honest things. They are unreliable co-conspirators. The body is like an actor in a poorly rehearsed play, fed a line by the director, the conscious mind, but forgetting its blocking. It fidgets when it should be still. It freezes when it should be relaxed. It betrays the script with every twitch and tremor. The tongue can be trained, but the pulse, the pupils, the tiny muscles that pull at the corners of our eyes, they are wild things. They do not take direction well. And this is because the body's first language isn't words, it's survival. It reacts to the stress of deceit long before the brain has finished congratulating itself on its own cleverness. A lie, you see, is a form of stress. It requires the brain to perform 3 tasks at once: suppress the truth, invent the falsehood, and then perform that falsehood convincingly. It's a tremendous cognitive load, and the strain always shows somewhere. The truth is effortless. It simply is. A lie is work. It reminds me of a sentiment from a very old, very shrewd observer of people, Machiavelli. He wasn't a wizard, and he didn't deal in magic, but in the far more complex and volatile art of human nature. He wrote, in essence, that the face of a man shows his mind more surely than his words, for words can be feigned, but the countenance is a poor dissembler. What he meant was simple, and it is the key to everything. Our faces are ancient storytellers, wired to show fear, surprise, and guilt long before our modern, clever tongues learned how to conceal them. The face tells the older story. The truth is etched into our musculature. Words are just the paint we apply on top, and often it's a very thin coat. This brings us to a simple yet profoundly powerful observation. You don't need weeks of training or complicated technology. Most of the time, all you need is to pay attention. All you need are 3 seconds. A lie, when it is first spoken, creates a fracture, a tiny hairline crack in the performance. For 3 brief seconds, the effort of the lie is so great that the truth leaks out through the fissures. It is a moment of pure, involuntary honesty. And if you know how to look and how to listen, you can see it, you can feel it, just as I felt it in that sun-drenched kitchen. Let us break down that window. Let us look at what happens second by second when a person steps away from the truth. The first second, the eyes. Forget everything you've been told about liars not making eye contact. The amateur liar looks away. The practiced liar, knowing this cliché, does the opposite. They will stare at you. But this too is a tell. The first second is all about the eyes, for they are the only part of the brain that is exposed. When a person tells the truth, their gaze is relaxed. It moves naturally. It connects. It might drift as they recall a detail, and then it reconnects. It is a living, breathing thing. But in the first second of a lie, the eyes change their nature. Watch for one of 3 things. First, there is the hard stare. The liar will lock their eyes onto yours with an intensity that feels less like connection and more like an interrogation. It is an act of aggression, a performance of sincerity. Their eyes will be wide, the pupils often slightly dilated, not from interest, but from the adrenaline of the deception. It feels unnatural because it is unnatural. It's a mask of honesty, held in place by sheer force of will. You will feel a desperate need to look away, not from intimidation, but from the sheer falseness of the gaze. It's like looking at a beautifully painted apple made of wax. Everything is right, but the life is gone. Second, there is the microflick. This isn't the gentle, thoughtful drift of someone recalling a memory. This is a sudden, sharp dart of the eyes, almost too fast to register. Often it is down and to their left. Psychologists have theories about this, linking it to the brain's hemispheres for creation versus memory, but you don't need the theory. You just need to see the motion. It's the look of a student frantically trying to recall the answer on a test they didn't study for. It is the brain, for a split second, checking its internal script. Am I getting this right? This is a moment of profound insecurity, and it flashes across the eyes before the face can reassert its composure. The eyes, then, are the first fissure in the dam. They are the initial, almost imperceptible crackle of ice before it gives way. But a lie is not a singular event. It is a cascade, a chain reaction of dissonance that ripples outward from the mind and into the very sinews of the body. The eyes are only the opening act in a 3-second play of self-betrayal. The curtain now rises on the second act, where the stage is the body itself. Our faces are ancient storytellers, but our bodies are the older, more honest historians. They keep a record of every stress, every fear, every exertion. And a lie, as we have established, is work. It is a heavy stone to lift. I learned this not in a boardroom or across a negotiation table, but in the dust-moted quiet of my old friend Julian's apartment. It was a Tuesday in the heart of a particularly bleak November, the kind of day where the sky is a single, unbroken sheet of bruised gray. Julian had just lost his father, a man of formidable character and roaring laughter who had seemed to me as permanent as a mountain. I had called, of course, offered the usual clumsy condolences, the hollow architecture of words we use to scaffold another's grief. Julian had insisted he was fine, his voice over the phone a little too bright, a little too quick. "I'm holding up," he'd said. "We're all holding up." But I felt that familiar, cold pinprick of untruth, the same one I'd felt as a boy with the glittering wreckage of the sugar bowl at my feet. So I went to him. His apartment, usually a chaotic symphony of books, half-finished paintings, and scattered sheet music, was unnervingly tidy. It was as if a stranger had come in and imposed a sterile, joyless order upon the place. Julian met me at the door, and the first second passed in an instant. His eyes. They were not flickering with insecurity, nor were they locked in a hard, manufactured stare. They were simply vacant. Caverns. It was a look I had not yet catalogued, the look of a truth so large and painful that the lie wasn't a construction, but a desperate, hollowed-out shelter.
Come in," he said, the words a puff of warm air in the cold hallway. He was wearing a thick, cabled fisherman's sweater, the color of old ivory. He led me to the living room, where 2 mugs of tea were already steaming on the heavy oak coffee table. He had been expecting me. "I'm fine," he said again, settling into the armchair opposite me. He smiled, but it was a clumsy piece of patchwork, a gesture that didn't reach the vast, empty territory of his eyes. And then I saw it. The second. He was not relaxed. He sat perfectly upright, his back a rigid plank against the plush cushions of the chair. He picked up his mug, but he didn't drink. Instead, he held it with both hands, his knuckles white, his thumbs pressed hard into the ceramic. He held it in front of his chest, a warm porcelain shield. His feet, I noticed, were not crossed casually, but planted flat and parallel on the floor, as if he were bracing for a physical impact. His entire body was a fortress. Every muscle was engaged in the monumental effort of being fine. We spoke for a while about nothing of consequence. The weather, a book I was reading, a political scandal that felt laughably insignificant in that room. All the while, he held his pose. His body was anchored to the chair, shielded by the mug, a statue of forced composure. The dissonance was deafening. His words spoke of acceptance and resilience, but his body screamed of a grief so profound it had to be physically contained, lest it shatter him into a million pieces. Finally, I set my own mug down. The soft clink of porcelain on wood was the only sound in the room. "Julian," I said, my voice softer than I intended, "you don't have to hold it all together for me." For a moment, he did not move. The statue remained. Then, in the 3rd second, the change began. The tension in his shoulders seemed to dissolve, not all at once, but in a slow, painful melt. The mug was lowered to the table, his hands now trembling slightly. He slumped back into the chair, the rigid posture collapsing as if a puppeteer had finally cut the strings. His face, which had been a mask of stoic control, crumpled. A single, sharp sob broke from him. It was not a sound of words, but of pure physical release. The lie was over. The heavy stone had been dropped, and in its place, the truth, in all its devastating, necessary weight, was allowed to fill the space between us. That was when I truly understood. The body does not know how to lie. It only knows how to brace, to shield, and to hold. The second, the body's betrayal. What I saw in Julian's apartment was a masterclass in the body's involuntary honesty. While the liar's mind is frantically constructing the narrative, juggling facts and managing the listener's perception, the body is left to deal with the primal chemical consequences of that stress. The cognitive load of deception triggers a subtle fight or flight response. The body, our ancient and truthful companion, prepares for a threat. It does not want to be there. It wants to run or it wants to hide. This impulse manifests in a series of physical tells that are incredibly difficult to suppress. In that crucial second after the eyes have given their signal, you must let your gaze soften and drift downwards to the torso, the hands, the feet. You are looking for signs of tension and defense. I have come to group them into 3 primary categories. 1. A lie makes us feel unmoored, adrift on a sea of our own invention. The subconscious, instinctual response is to find purchase, to ground ourselves physically against the psychological vertigo. The dissembler will anchor themselves to their surroundings. Observe the hands. Do they grip the arms of a chair, knuckles whitening? Are they pressed flat against a desk or a table, as if to keep it from floating away? This is the body trying to hold the lie in place, to give it weight and substance. Look at the feet. Are they planted firmly, parallel on the floor, as Julian's were? This is an unusually rigid and formal posture for a relaxed conversation. It is the posture of bracing for impact. A truthful person is at ease. Their legs might be crossed, one foot might tap idly. The liar's body is a statue. 2. The shield. If the body cannot flee the situation, it will attempt to hide. This is not a conscious act of cowardice, but a primal impulse to create a barrier between the self and the perceived threat, the person they are lying to, you. Objects become shields. A coffee mug held high against the chest, as Julian did, is a classic example. A person might suddenly pick up a book, a throw pillow, or a folder and hold it in their lap or against their torso. They are literally placing a wall between their lie and your perception. The body itself becomes a shield. The most common form of this is, of course, crossing the arms. But be cautious here. Context is everything. A person might cross their arms because they are cold, or because it is a comfortable, habitual posture. But when it happens in the precise second after a questionable statement, it is a defensive wall going up. It is a gesture that says, "Do not come any closer." 3. The grooming gesture. Lying produces a spike in nervous energy. This energy must go somewhere. Often, it is channeled into small, repetitive, self-soothing actions, known as displacement activities or grooming gestures. These are the body's attempts to comfort itself under duress. Watch for the sudden need to fix something. A man might abruptly adjust his tie, even if it was perfectly straight. A woman might smooth her skirt, pick an imaginary piece of lint from her sleeve, or tuck a strand of hair behind her ear that was not out of place. Pay attention to the neck. The neck is a surprisingly vulnerable and honest part of the body. Rubbing the back of the neck is a common response to stress. It is a self-hug, a subconscious act of reassurance. Likewise, for women, a sudden touch to the delicate hollow at the base of the throat, the suprasternal notch, is a powerful gesture of vulnerability and self-protection. These are not parlor tricks. They are windows into the deep physiological dissonance a lie creates. The eyes flicker. The body braces. A fortress is built. Anchors are dropped. Shields are raised. The performance is elaborate, exhausting, and utterly unnatural. But the body has one more story to tell. For in the third and final second, the lie must pass through the throat and become sound. And the voice, like the body, has a memory far longer and more honest than the conscious mind. It too is an unreliable co-conspirator. And so we arrive at the final, most resonant piece of the puzzle. The eyes may flicker, the body may anchor and shield, but it is in the third second that the dissembler's own voice rises up to betray them. The third second, the voice. The truth is effortless. It is a river flowing from a known source, its cadence and depth shaped by the familiar landscape of memory. It simply is. A lie, however, is a clumsy piece of engineering, a dam built of twigs and mud, holding back the immense pressure of what is real. The voice is the first fissured in that dam. It is where the sound of the strain becomes audible. Our voices are instruments of astonishing complexity. They are shaped by the musculature of our throats, the air in our lungs, the unique architecture of our sinuses and mouths. But more than that, they are tuned by our emotions. Joy gives the voice lift, grief gives it weight, and a lie? A lie gives it a peculiar thinness, like a string pulled too tight, threatening to snap. I learned this not in a quiet study, but in a room that smelled of old paper, pipe tobacco, and ambition. It was the office of a man named Arthur Vance, my first mentor in the legal world. Arthur was a titan, a man whose voice was his primary weapon and his finest work of art. It was a low, melodic hum, like a cello, a sound that could soothe a panicked client or dismantle a hostile witness with equal, unhurried grace. His office was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather, the walls lined with books that were not for show, but were dog-eared and underlined, their spines softened from use. I revered him. I studied his every gesture, his every turn of phrase, hoping to absorb a fraction of his command. One afternoon, I sat opposite him in one of his worn, high-backed leather armchairs. A younger associate, a brilliant but anxious man named Peterson, had just been fired. The official reason was a catastrophic error in a filing, a mistake so clumsy it was almost unbelievable. But rumors were crackling through the firm's undercurrents. Peterson had been a rising star, and his ascent had threatened Arthur's carefully cultivated territory. The rumor was that Arthur had orchestrated the failure, a subtle act of sabotage. I did not want to believe it. It felt like accusing a cathedral of being poorly built. "It's a shame about Peterson," I began, my voice tentative. Arthur looked up from a brief, his expression a mask of weary sympathy. He took a slow pull from his pipe, the sweet smoke curling around his head like a halo of worldly wisdom. "A terrible shame," he agreed. His voice was as warm and smooth as ever. He was a bright boy, but the pressure, you see, it finds the weak points in us all. There it was, the setup, the establishment of a plausible, even compassionate narrative. My heart rate steadied. The rumors were just that, the jealous whispers of lesser men. Then I made my mistake. I pushed. Some people are saying, they're saying the error wasn't his, that the files were altered. I watched him. The first second passed. His eyes did not flicker away. No, he gave me the hard stare, a look of disappointed gravity, the kind a father gives a son who has just let him down. It was masterful. The second, his body did not shift. He was already anchored, his hands resting solidly on the mahogany of his desk, his posture a portrait of unshakable integrity. But then he spoke. "I had nothing to do with that," he said. And the instrument broke. It was not what he said, it was the sound it made. That magnificent, resonant cello of a voice suddenly became a viola, its pitch climbing just a fraction, a barely perceptible tightening. The rich, woody timbre was gone, replaced by something thin and metallic. It was the sound of immense, unseen pressure. The flow was gone too. His usual unhurried cadence was replaced by a slight, almost imperceptible rush, as if the words were uncomfortable in his mouth and needed to be expelled quickly. The sentence hung in the air between us, a beautifully painted apple made of wax. It looked right, but it felt wrong. It sounded wrong. The dissonance was so profound, it was like a change in the room's temperature, a sudden, sharp chill in that warm, tobacco-scented air. In that third second, the lie was not a theory or a rumor, but a physical presence in the room, a ghost at the feast. Arthur Vance, my mentor, the man whose voice could command juries and soothe judges, could not command his own vocal cords in the face of a simple falsehood. He had spent all his cognitive energy perfecting the look in his eyes and the stillness of his body, and his voice was left unguarded. The truth, under pressure, had leaked out. That was the day I understood that the voice is the most honest part of our performance. Let us break down what you must listen for. When you are parsing that third second, you are not listening for the words. You are listening to the music beneath them. There are three primary tells.
1. The vocal climb. This is what I heard from Arthur. The stress of maintaining a lie constricts the muscles in the larynx. It's an involuntary physiological response to the fight or flight instinct. The lie is a threat, and the body tenses to face it. This tension pulls the vocal cords taut, raising the pitch of the voice. It may be subtle, a shift of only a semitone, but it is unmistakable. The voice loses its resonant bass and takes on a higher, strained quality. It is the sound of effort. Remember, the truth is effortless. 2. The cadence break. The truth, drawn from memory, has a natural, organic rhythm. There are pauses for thought, accelerations for excitement, a natural ebb and flow. A lie has no such rhythm because it is not being recalled. It is being constructed or recited from a hastily written internal script. This results in 2 common cadence breaks. The first is the vocal sprint, where the dissembler rushes through the lie, hoping to get past the point of discomfort as quickly as possible. The words tumble out, too fast, too smooth.
The second is the opposite, the measured march. Here, the speaker is being excessively careful, plotting each step. Their speech becomes slow, deliberate, and oddly spaced, as if they are mentally checking off a list to ensure their story holds together. Both are signs of cognitive load. They are not talking, they are building. 3. The sonic hollow. This is perhaps the most subtle and powerful tell of all. It is not a sound, but a lack of it. It is the quality of the voice, its timbre. A voice filled with genuine emotion, whether happiness, sadness, or conviction, is rich with overtones. It feels full, present, and three-dimensional. A lie creates a kind of emotional vacuum. The cognitive resources are all directed toward the mechanics of the deception, leaving no room for genuine feeling. The resulting sound is flat, empty, and lifeless. It is a two-dimensional voice. It lacks warmth, it lacks texture, it lacks depth. It is a sonic hollow, an empty space where the truth is supposed to be. The eyes, the body, and the voice. In 3 short seconds, they perform a symphony of dissonance for anyone who knows how to listen. The eyes flicker or harden, betraying the brain's frantic work. The body freezes and shields, betraying the primal need for defense. And the voice strains and empties, betraying the physical stress of the fabrication. It is a cascade of failure, a beautiful, tragic, and utterly human sequence. The lie is a stone thrown into the placid water of our being, and these are the ripples that spread inevitably to the shore. You do not need a machine. You do not need to be a master of interrogation. You only need to be present. You need to watch, to feel, and to listen. The human body is an ancient, honest thing. It does not know how to lie. It is only the conscious mind, that clever, arrogant, and recent addition, that attempts the feat. And for 3 seconds, the body will always win. But seeing the lie is one thing. Knowing what to do with that knowledge, that is something else entirely. It is a heavier burden than you can possibly imagine.